Time to re-up YouTube. Your boy Young Mustard is back with another video, and of course we have to talk about this first round of the playoffs because a lot of stuff went down that if I didn't address, I would look remiss. I mean, we're talking all-time playoff performances, all-time playoff upsets. The list goes on of amazing things that went down in this first round that we gotta talk about today. But before we go any further, I want to shout out my social media. Make sure you go and follow me on Twitter. I dropped the best bangers on the platform, I'm not gonna lie, so you're missing out if you don't do that right now. But without further ado, let's get started with our first takeaway, and that is the Sacramento Kings Sabonis problem. Now, a lot has been made about the performance of Domantas Sabonis in the first round against the Golden State Warriors. As one could argue, if Sabonis plays up to his regular season capabilities in that series, that the Kings win against the Warriors, as his numbers of 16 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists don't look too bad in the box score, but when you throw in 4 turnovers a game, shooting below 50% from the field, along with 50% from the free throw line, yeah, those numbers in context don't look too great. Then you throw in the fact that on the glass, he was completely outmanned by Kevon Looney. My goodness. I mean, we're talking about Looney with some of the most historic rebounding performances in just this series alone against a player in Sabonis who led the league in rebounding this year. When you look at the number comparison in terms of offensive rebounding between both of them and compare their minutes, it's actually kind of insane. Looney played 32 less minutes than Sabonis throughout the entire series. That's a game's worth of minutes in difference. Meanwhile, Looney still out-rebounded Sabonis on the offensive glass with 37 offensive rebounds to Sabonis's 31. And honestly, the numbers don't do justice as to how bad Sabonis was in this series. Offensively, Sabonis was really limited. He cannot go to his right side whatsoever. He really only has 2 moves. That's ramming his left shoulder into his defender and his left post hook. Other than that, I don't think Sabonis has a single real move in his arsenal, which is why a lot of people have been saying he has no bag. Then you throw in the fact that defensively, Sabonis is not good, and we knew that even before he went to the Kings. But it's crazy that when people like me were saying this, even as soon as the Sabonis and Halliburton trade went down, I was called instantly a hater by a lot of Kings fans and that I just don't know basketball. And look, Sabonis is a really good regular season player, but it's very obvious that a lot of people did not watch him in Indiana. He was never some elite level scorer. As a scoring option, realistically, if you're trying to win a championship, even though I don't think you can win with him because of his defensive issues, he should be a third option in that kind of situation. Sabonis in this series just confirmed what I already knew about him, and that's that in the playoffs, he is just gonna put a hard ceiling on any roster that he's on due to his deficiencies on both sides of the ball. And despite the Kings going 7 with the Golden State Warriors, let's be serious here. If it wasn't for De'Aaron Fox being one of the most clutch players over the last 5 to 6 seasons, this series would have been over in 5 games. But speaking of series that should have been over in 5 games, that brings me to the Atlanta Hawks. Look, I've been saying this for a while, and I'm not going to spend too much time because Hawks fans hate me whenever I give them truth and reality about their organization. When you talk about mid in the NBA, the Hawks fit that bill entirely. Not only did this team finish off the season 500, but they basically finished off middle of the pack when it came to their net rating due to them being a good offensive team, but a mediocre to bad defensive team, so it balanced out pretty evenly. The roster of the Atlanta Hawks is so strange because I really love what they have on their bench, as I think their bench is one of the better ones in the league. Despite not playing at all in the playoffs, though I understand his age, AJ Griffin is a really solid young player that I would like to see get some more progression over the next couple of years. Then you throw in guys like Bogdanovich, who's a really good floor spacer, Sadiq Bey, who I like on the wing, Onyeka, who's a really good defensive big off the bench, and Jalen Johnson, who I think has a lot of potential on the wing as well. And I think Atlanta's bench is one of the strong points on this roster. Unfortunately though, their starting lineup really is the true issue, and against the Boston Celtics, it was on full display. DeJounte Murray, despite what the box score tells you, is just not that impactful of a player and isn't really that good of a volume scorer. Despite his percentages, nobody guards him outside the 3-point line, so he's providing little to no spacing. He's a solid passer and playmaker, but it's never anything too advanced. His reads are something that a lot of players in the league can make in his position, and defensively, he is far from the the player that he was about 2 to 3 years ago. You also have DeAndre Hunter, who I like his efforts on both sides of the ball, but he is vastly inconsistent, and though that doesn't apply to this playoff run, what I'm about to say, he's still injury prone as hell. And don't even get me started on that sorry pathetic excuse of a $100+ million contract extension, John Collins. Oh my goodness, he is trash. You guys know it, I know it, we all know it. And with this team giving up what they gave up last year for DeJounte Murray in the offseason, I really do question what's the future for this organization around Trae Young. Trae is an excellent player and had a very interesting series against the Celtics. He started off really bad, but it became very obvious as the series went on that he figured out the Celtics defensive coverage on him and played very good in some of those games down the stretch. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about that historic performance in Game 5. Oh my god, what a shot from Trae Young, man, I ain't gonna lie. I mean, you talk about emptying the clip. Without DeJounte Murray, he went out there and said, fuck it, I'ma do it by myself, Thanos style. Unfortunately though, I ain't gonna lie, that might have been Trae Young's last time in a Hawks uniform, as we all know the rumors about them potentially trading him in the offseason. Now I don't think that's going to happen, but unfortunately when you mismanage your organization the way the Hawks have, trying to speed up their window to win a championship, it's very clear that you can end up in a situation like now where you did all you can to put your chips on the table and they're back in the same position that they were last year. It's tragic, I tell you. But speaking of tragic, that brings me to the situation in Philadelphia right now where Joel Embiid looks like he is unable to play Game 1 against the Boston Celtics in round 2. For starters, best wishes to Joel Embiid. It's tough to see any player go down with an injury, especially one of his magnitude that's probably going to win the MVP in a couple of days. But despite the talent of Joel Embiid, it's time for us to have a legitimate conversation about where he ranks among players due to the fact that he just can't stay healthy. And to be fair, I think a lot of people have taken that into account, but call me crazy, I am now starting to question his superstar status in the league. Not because of his talent at all, but because of his durability. At the end of the day, the best ability is availability, and Joel Embiid has none of that. Every postseason, whether it's a freak accident or just something that his body naturally goes through like diarrhea, it seems like there's always something bothering him and affecting his play. And props to Embiid, he's always going to thug it out and fight through that pain. But at a certain point in time, when are we just going to acknowledge maybe Joel Embiid can't be your #1 option, not because of his talent and skill set, but because of his health. But while we're on the subject of the Eastern Conference, that leads me into Joel Embiid's former teammate, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy G buckets and the G is forgets. I ain't gonna lie, man, Jimmy Butler was sensational, bruh. Don't get me wrong, I'm really torn about the fact that Jimmy did this against the Milwaukee Bucks. My guy Giannis, still got love for him by the way, just have to show him some tough love. But when you talk about an obliteration, my goodness, that is what Jimmy Butler did to the Milwaukee Bucks. A lot of people in the comment section in my video were like, dude, can't you just give Jimmy Butler credit? Well, guess what? That's what we finna do right now. When you talk about the best player throughout the entire playoffs so far, Jimmy Butler fits that description right now. As against one of the best defenses of this generation that has Drew Holiday, who's gonna make an all-defensive team. Giannis, a former depoy that played 2 games, but granted, he was cooking him in those 2 games too at times. And a rim protector that finished top 3 in depoy voting of Brook Lopez. Jimmy Butler went out there and averaged 37 points a game, 6 rebounds and 5 assists, 2 steals, and shot, get this efficiency, 60% from the field, 44% from 3, 71% at the free throw line, and a true shooting percentage of 67%. Mind you, this is with a roster that's 3rd and 4th leading scorers in this series were Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin. Jimmy Butler is truly the definition of being built different. Any type of shot he wanted, he got up and over Drew Holiday's lame ass. Bullying this dude in the post, hitting sidesteps, step back threes anytime he wanted to, getting to the rim with ease, using his gravity to create shots for his teammates, whether they're on the cut, open on the 3-point line, in the lob spot, wherever they are, Jimmy Butler found them in this series. Then you throw in the fact that defensively he was on his shit. I ain't gonna lie, this is one of the greatest series that we have ever seen in NBA history. And that's why my takeaway isn't the fact that Jimmy Butler is him once again in the playoffs, because we been knew this about Jimmy Butler. My takeaway is that especially after this playoffs, whether they lose against the Knicks or not, I think that Jimmy Butler's status as a Hall of Fame caliber player is completely solidified. This is a guy that time after time after time over the last 3 to 4, 5 seasons has had some all-time playoff moments. Even with subpar rosters, playing with guys like Tyler Hero, the Nigerian Rudy Gobert and Bam Adebayo, that finesse king Duncan Robinson making $90 million just to get DNPs. Despite all of the turmoil on those rosters, Jimmy Butler has been able to take this Miami Heat team, or even the Philadelphia team in the 2019 run, to heights and lengths in the postseason that they really had no business being in. So going forward, I don't care what happens in this Knicks series, he could shoot 0 of 50 throughout the rest of the way. I think that when you talk about the legacy of Jimmy Butler, not only are you talking about iconic playoff performances, but you're talking about a Hall of Fame caliber player, and rightfully so. And speaking of Hall of Fame players, that brings me to the final point of this video, my biggest takeaway of the playoffs, and that's that Steph Curry and LeBron James, they ain't ready, bruh. They're not ready to give up their thrones. I mean, this playoffs was supposed to be the rising of the young guard, right? Ja Morant, the Grizzlies, the Kings, Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox. We're talking about new teams, new faces trying to solidify themselves on the old guard of Steph Curry and LeBron James. And so many people were ready to write them off. Let's talk about LeBron real quick and then we'll get to Steph in a second. LeBron against the Grizzlies didn't have some jaw-breaking series, but he played good enough and actually played really solid in that last game in order to give them the W, which is all that sports is about. Get them the victory, bruh. LeBron found ways to be very impactful even though he didn't have it as a scorer throughout the whole series. We saw how in overtime and the fourth quarter of Game 4, a very pivotal game that put them up 3-1, he stepped up in the clutch. Whether it was the high arcing layup over the Defensive Player of the Year Triple J to get them to overtime in the first place, or you could look at his performance in overtime, especially when he went left, the side that Dylan Brooks said he couldn't take him on, and he got the bucket to seal the game. A game in which, by the way, he had 22 points and 20 rebounds along with 7 assists and 2 blocks. And in the closeout game that they won by 40, he capped it off with 22, 6, and 5 on 69% shooting from the field and 40% from 3. The Grizzlies will have their moment, but it's not gonna come at the expense of the king, you feel me? Then that brings me to the other man out west, Steph Curry. When you talk about the old guard having to stand their ground, that's exactly what Steph Curry did alongside LeBron in the first round. Steph Curry had a sensational Game 7, but before we even get to that Game 7, let's look at what he did as a whole in this series against the Kings. Curry had one of his all-time playoff performances, averaging 34 points a game, 5 assists and 5 rebounds, shooting 49% from the field, 38% from 3 on over 13 attempts a game, and 83% at the free throw line, which accumulates to a true shooting percentage of 62%. But honestly, the percentages and the overall box score don't do justice. If you look at what Steph Curry did in that Game 7, that encapsulates everything about that man's whole career as an offensive threat. As with his back against the wall, do or die, if you lose, you go home, and you lose in the first round for the first time in your career. Curry went out there and damn near scored half of his team's points. In a game that Draymond had 8 points, which is expected. Andrew Wiggins also had 17 points though on 5 of 16 shooting. Klay Thompson had 16 points on 19 shots. Jordan Poole had 8 points on 9 shots. With the supporting cast showing up in the terrible fashion that they did, it reminded me of a flashback back to the finals of last year. But this time Curry did something even more spectacular with one of the all-time Game 7 performances. You guys know, the guy gave the Kings 50 with a true shooting percentage of 62%, knocking down 7 of his threes, along with 8 rebounds and 6 assists. There really just isn't anything that man couldn't do and can do in this league offensively. I've said this before and I'm gonna say it again. I believe that Steph Curry is arguably the greatest offensive player of all time, and it was on full display not only in that game but throughout this entire series against the Kings. And similar to LeBron James, they're showing us that their legacies are not done being written. And if anybody's gonna take them out, it's gonna be each other. It's gonna be fun to see what happens in that second round matchup between the Lakers and the Warriors. Oh my god, the community is about to get so toxic, and for good reason. But hey, that concludes this video. If you guys agreed with anything that I said, let me know down below in the comment section, or if you disagree, let me know as well. Also, do not forget to like this video, share, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Press that bell for post notifications as well. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. You guys stay safe and have a blessed day. Peace.